in this session initially we will discuss a small topic, though it is not exactly the mainstream fluid mechanics, rather it's a kind of interfacial science, and that is surface tension, surface or interfacial tension. You see that liquid their interactions with the solid surface and interactions amongst the other liquid molecules. A liquid molecule in this bulk of liquid and close to an interface, it is characterized by two specific properties. One is cohesion and another is adhesion. Cohesion is basically the preference of liquid molecules to stay close to each other, right? Are governed by attractive force of interaction between same or between similar molecules. Whereas adhesion is a relative preference to get adsorbed on a solid surface, right? And this is basically again preferred interaction of liquid with respect to solid rather than with another liquid. And if you see that if cohesion, this property in magnitude is greater than adhesion, we have a non-wetting liquid. Liquid drops will be like this, right? This is the solid surface. And this will be the liquid. So it will form a structure like this. And on the other hand, where adhesion is dominating over cohesion, so it will be the spreading liquid droplets on the surface like this. So how we can differentiate it? We can differentiate through the measure of contact angle. Contact angle means at this point of this is called the pinning point. At this pinning point, if I draw a tangent to the existing surface of the liquid, the respective angle of the tangent with respect to the solid surface on the side of liquid, that means this angle, right? And here it will be this angle. So this theta is the contact angle, right? So for non-wetting liquid, theta will be an obtuse angle, whereas for wetting liquid, theta is less than 90 degrees, right? So this cohesion and adhesion, their mutual interplay actually determines this theta. If cohesion is overpowering over adhesion, we will have the obtuse contact angle, and if adhesion is overpowering this cohesion, then it's an acute contact angle. So in relation to this, we should also understand the interfacial or surface tension. What is the origin of surface tension? Let's see. So origin of surface or interfacial tension. and this interfacial tension will be existing everywhere, like here, like at this solid liquid or this gas liquid interface, and like also at this gas solid interface, right? So this here, if it is a interfacial tension between liquid and air, right? So this we refer as surface tension. And between this solid and liquid, between solid and the gas, it's all interfacial tension. Or between two liquids, two immeasurable liquids, whatever we have, that's also an interfacial tension. So interfacial tension is a general term, whereas surface tension is a specific term where it is a gas liquid or liquid air interface. So liquid air interface, right? So interfacial tension may be any interface. Now you see what is the origin. Let's say this is an interface between liquid and gas, maybe liquid, another liquid, maybe liquid with another solid. Correct. So let's first go it by this liquid and air. So if I think of a bulk liquid molecule, it's being attracted, or there will be a force interaction with molecules which are surrounding that central molecule. Right. So the net force is nearly equal to 0. Unless there is some specific orientation of attachments and hydrogen bonding, etc. etc. But if I am thinking physically, considering hard sphere model, that this is the central molecule of the liquid and which is being homogeneously surrounded by all other similar molecules. So it has got a force of interaction and the net force becomes 0, right? So whenever net force becomes 0, so this is the ground state of energy with respect to this system. But if I think of a molecule relative to bulk at the interface, what will happen? Now, over this lower hemisphere, it will be having the pull by other liquid molecules, right? So there will be a net drag on this particle to be that it will actually try to move it down from the interface, right? So energetically, if I consider this energy of the molecule as ground state E0 and this is E1, so obviously we can understand that E1 is greater than E0. So surface molecules are always at a higher energy state, right? So to create new interface, that means more molecule at the surface, we need energy, right? We need more energy. So in this situation, actually, what we can think of, that we can define the energy necessary to increase the surface area by unity at constant temperature, pressure and other compositions maybe, or if it is a homogeneous liquid, single component liquid, that at constant temperature and pressure, what is the investment in energy to increase the interface between the liquid and other liquid or liquid and the gas by 1 unit. That is the measure of interfacial tension. So interfacial tension is basically energy needed to increase the surface area or interfacial area by unit at constant temperature and pressure, right? So basically from this definition, from the specific definition, we can write the interfacial tension as the change of this total Gibbs energy, or we can write it N into G del Na at constant Tp, right? Where G is the molar Gibbs energy, and N is the total number of moles. Right. So this is the very definition of interfacial energy, or rather the interfacial tension, right? Surface tension or interfacial tension. So you see that dimension of this equal to dimension of energy divided by area. Alternatively, it is equal to the dimension of force by length. And that's why surface tension of water, or interfacial tension between water and air, which is the surface tension of water, is around 73 millinewton per meter. Right. 73 millinewton per meter. So that is the measure and units of this interfacial tension. So you see this Gibbs energy, generally we think that for a closed system where there is no escape of that material or no incoming material flow, only energy can be exchanged with the system and surrounding. So for closed system, from thermodynamics we are well aware that okay, I will write it as this, right? So this is not the universal definition of Gibbs energy. We have to understand in this relation. This is the expression for pressure volume system, right? In general, we can write the Gibbs energy will be the entropic contribution and thermal contribution will be always there, then Nx dy. So appropriate x and y terms are to be included. Just like here, we can write that for a surface active system, we can write this to be sigma into d of this A, d of A total, or A, whatever, right? So for interfacial systems, correct? So with this basic understanding, let's go for some specific topic relating interfacial tension. That is, first is Young-Laplace equation. What is that? Here we are trying to relate the contact angle to this interfacial tension and surface tension. See, there are three forces acting at this spinning point, right? The force here is solid surface, this is liquid and this is gas. So the tension here is sigma SL, here it is sigma SG, and here it is sigma LG, and this angle is theta. So these three forces are exactly balancing on each other over the entire pinning line, right? The pinning line or pinning curve looks like this. So at each and every point of this pinning line, these three forces are balancing each other. So if I write the balance, we can say that sigma SL in this direction plus sigma LG into cos theta must be equal to sigma SG. So basically cos theta is equal to sigma SG minus sigma SL divided by sigma LG. Right? So you see that for non-wetting drops, theta is greater than 90 So cos theta is negative. So definitely sigma Sg is lower than sigma Sl. Whereas for wetting drop, theta is less than 90. So cos theta is greater than 0. So sigma Sg is greater than sigma Sl. Right? And it has got a physical meaning. You see that when the direct exposure of the solid surface to gas, it is energetically not favored. When it will be energetically not favored? If it has got a high interfacial tension. Now we are intervening or perturbing the system with a drop of liquid. Right? So the liquid will spread and fill up the gap or fill up this interface, right? More and more if I have this interfacial energy per unit solid gas interface is lower, or sorry, it's higher than the interfacial energy per unit solid liquid interface, because system always tries to minimize its energy, right? If I have, say, this solid surface and there is here, so I have got a high energy of interaction, but it is not destabilizing itself because there is no other third component. But if I add a drop of water or say certain mass of water, it will spread on this surface if the interfacial energy per unit area for this solid liquid contact is lower compared to the interfacial energy per unit area of solid gas contact, right? Because system always tries to move to its lowest possible energy state. So this is basically the physical reasoning of this force balanced Young's Laplace equation. Next, this I am going to write without proof. We don't have to go into the detail. That if I have got a drop or bubble, right, a liquid drop or bubble, whatever it is, so internal pressure and external pressure, they are different. Generally, for convex drops and bubbles, P1 is greater than P2, right? For concave drops or drop surface, P1 is less than P2. So definitely this relation of P1 and P2 is intervened by the respective radii of curvature. And what is that relation? It states that P1 minus P2, which is delta P, pressure drop as we move from inside to outside of a drop, is equal to sigma, which is the respective interfacial tension at this interface, into 1 by R1 plus 1 by R, right? Where R1 and R2 are two radii of curvatures. Actually, you see that if I consider a small surface on this, so there will be two radii of curvature. One is this, right? So this is R1 and R1, and another is this. Let's say this is R2 and this is R2, right? So this is center O1, this is center O2. So for any curved surface of arbitrary shape, we can think of two radii of curvatures, R1 and R2, and this R1, R2, they have got, whenever the surface is curved, you see that if you look into from this section, we can establish it. I'm not going into that. That here we are having pressure, right? And there will be an external pressure. So the force which tries to bludge out this meniscus will be balanced by this interface, and respective component, if we take in the respective component, it will be a function of R1, and from there for considering this as R1, and similarly on the other side this as R2. So we can relate this pressure difference to this curvature, and that is the relation. So you see this relation, what we have to work with is delta P equal to sigma 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. So for spherical droplets, R1 is equal to R2 is equal to capital D by 2, where D is the diameter, right? So delta P will be equal to 2 sigma divided by R, and that is 4 sigma divided by D, right? Now in case of a cylindrical droplet, you see this R1 is infinity, whereas R2 it's equal to D by 2. So basically this delta P is equal to sigma divided by R2. So it is 2 sigma divided by D. So for the same diameter of the cylinder and for sphere, the difference of pressure is higher in case of sphere than that of cylinder, right? So that is the topic that is relating. So here first we have introduced the definition of this interfacial or surface tension. Second, we have discussed about the Young-Laplace equation. Third, the difference of pressure for a drop or bubble between inside and outside. And next, there is a simple, pretty easy calculation that minimum energy requirement if we split a large drop of radius r into droplets of radius smaller. See that energy minimum required is the excess surface energy we have to supply. So we can write that what is the new surface energy? The state 1, you see the state 1 is the large drop, state 2 or the final state is the n number of small drops, but we don't know n. So just considering it to be n, we write that this is n into 4 pi r square, that is the final surface area, minus 4 pi capital R square, initial surface area, multiplied by sigma, the respective interfacial tension. So if I can get the value of n, we can solve it, and what will be n? It can be obtained by simple this volume balance. 4 pi by 3 r cube is equal to into n is equal to 4 pi by 3 capital R cube. So n is equal to capital R divided by small r whole cube. So we will simply substitute it here and we will calculate the minimum energy required to split a large size droplet into n number of smaller droplets. However, the actual energy, delta A actual, will be much higher than delta E calculated, because the energy required for straining the drop, the larger drop, and splitting it into, whenever we are splitting a large drop into smaller droplets, most of the energy is actually being lost. What was the elastic energy required to strain the large droplet such that it splits into smaller droplets, and most of the energy is lost in the form of heat. And that's why this minimum energy requirement is much lower than the actual energy to split a large drop into n number of smaller drops, right? So next, it's a very important topic and interesting also. Let me just check. So it is the last topic of surface tension, that's called capillary rise. What is observed that in a pool of liquid exposed to atmospheric pressure, if I insert a small diameter, very small diameter in the order of millimeter, the tube which is called a capillary, right? So this is the capillary. Then we will have the liquid level will be rising up to certain height in the capillary. So this is, let's say this is H. So H will be positive if theta, the contact angle, is less than 90. And H will be negative for non-wetting, that is theta greater than 90. Right? So that will be a depression in this capillary. Like mercury, in the pool of mercury, if you put a glass capillary, the level inside the particular capillary will go for a shortfall. So here the meniscus will be forming here. But if it is water, it will rise. So what is the capillary rise and why it is happening actually? You see that if I go for a large view, it's something here we have a meniscus, right? So this is not flat. Why? Because we have interfacial tension and this angle is a respective contact angle. And if the capillary has got a radius r, so there will be a net upward force acting on the liquid whenever even the liquid is here. So as there is a net upward force, the liquid will start rising, but how long it will go on rising, whether it is indefinite, no. So it will rise up to a point where the static column height of the liquid, the respective weight, is exactly balanced by the upward force of this interfacial tension, right? So what is that upward force? See, it's acting over the perimeter, right? It's acting over the perimeter. So the perimeter is 2 pi r multiplied by sigma, because length dimension, the pinning line length multiplied by sigma is the overall force, which is just having an oblique direction, right? But we have to take the component in the vertical direction. So this is theta. So we will multiply it by cos theta. And that is balancing the pool height h, right? And we neglect this volume of this exclusion of this volume of liquid in the meniscus, right? So that's basically not at all to be considered unless h is comparable to r, but generally h is much higher than r. So we can write this is h into rho into g into pi r square. So h we can calculate, that pi cancels out, r here cancels out. So h is 2 sigma cos theta divided by rho g. So it just justifies our previous observation that h will be greater than 0 if theta is, or if the liquid is a wetting liquid, that means cos theta is positive, right? And in case of non-wetting liquid, we will have a negative h. So with that is all about the surface tension. So with that, let's solve a problem in surface tension. So you see, it's related to capillary rise itself. What is the problem? The problem states, develop a formula for capillary rise of a fluid having an interfacial tension sigma with ER, having an interfacial tension sigma, that is the surface tension actually, with ER and contact angle theta between two vertical or between two concentric glass tubes of radii R0 and Ri. So what is the case? See, the capillary is an annular capillary, right? So here we have the liquid and here the liquid will rise. Okay? So we'll have to consider this rise of liquid. So this is inner radius Ri and this is R0. Now you see that at this point we have a pinning line like this, outer one, and for the inner one the pinning line is like this. So there will be, here we will have a force and here also we will have a force, right? Now this force, and everywhere the angle with the vertical is contact angle because this angle is theta, right? This angle is theta, this is theta, etc. So the overall force, upward force, is 2 pi R0 into sigma plus 2 pi Ri into sigma, and that must be equal to the weight of the liquid in the annulus. So that is pi into R0 square minus Ri square into rho into G into H, right? So pi, and here this will cancel out. So H is equal to the sigma or 2 sigma, then R0 minus Ri into rho G, right? Because one of these R0 plus Ri will cancel out with R0 plus Ri here. So that's the expression. Okay? So that's all about the surface tension. So we'll start and introduce another very important topic of fluid mechanics now, and that is called the drag force. So drag, you see, in general where from it originates. If I have a solid surface or solid itself in a fluid where there is some relative velocity, that doesn't mean the solid is always static, it may be moving as well. Both may be moving, or the liquid alone is moving across a static solid object, or the solid may be moving through a stagnant pool of liquid, right? Or the third cases, both may be moving, and there are some cases like they can move in the same direction or they can be moving in the opposite direction. So whatever it is, so fluid will exert a force on this solid surface. What are the forces? See, if I consider a small elemental area, here we will have a shear force acting, and additionally there will be pressure that's acting also, right? So the total force dF is contributed by shear plus contributed by pressure, right? So this shear we can write as tau W into dA, or rather we will use the same idea that here tau W is not the shear stress, but rather it is the tangential force in the vector form divided by our per unit area in scalar form. It is not the typical stress tensor, right? So this tau W is a vector now, which is the shear stress or the tangential force per unit area. Then minus PdA. Why minus PdA? Because the direction of area is normal outward. We have discussed it in deriving Bernoulli's equation. So now the total force will be an integral over area. Sorry. So this is the theoretical approach of calculating the total force acting on this solid object, and it is exerted by the liquid in cases where the liquid and solid they are having a non-zero relative velocity, right? So if it is non-zero relative velocity, why I am saying this? because if it is a non-zero relative velocity, then we will have non-zero tau w, and the pressure will be heterogeneous over the surface, because if the fluid and solid, they are having a non-zero relative velocity, the distribution of the pressure on different sides will be, there will be distribution. Pressure will not be uniform everywhere, right? Pressure will not be uniform, so there will be distribution, and as a consequence we will have a force which is being exerted by the fluid on the solid object. Now, this force, after calculation, we can resolve it in the component along the direction of motion. So this is the direction of relative velocity, this or horizontal, and there will be another direction which is perpendicular to it, right? So force which we can resolve in the direction parallel to the direction of motion, and another force which is perpendicular to the direction of motion. So force parallel to the direction of relative velocity, that means both directions. It may be like this or maybe this, right? And the force perpendicular to the direction of relative velocity, right? So this force we call drag, which is of much interest to chemical engineers, whereas this one, perpendicular one, that's called the lift force, right? So lift force has got and the aerodynamic people, they take a large interest in this lift force because of this design of the Boeings and all, and any planes that depends on this lift force, its smooth function. So we will not be interested a lot about the lift force. We will majorly focus on drag force. We will see why we are more interested in drag force, because this drag force has got direct influence in certain chemical processing pertaining to particle technology, right? Where we separate particles, a heterogeneous group of particles like having different diameters and different density, we can put that bulk in a stagnant column of liquid, and based on the drag force they will attain different terminal velocity, and we can achieve a separation between them. So in mineral processing, in particle technology, this drag force has got a lot of importance. So next we have to think about how to calculate the drag force. So drag force, you see, before going into that, drag force is contributed by shear as well as by pressure, because this parallel component will be contributed by both. The lift will also be contributed by both. So we can write that total drag force is contributed by pressure drag and shear drag, right? So this is the total drag. Now eventually, though we have written the equation, eventually we cannot calculate the total force using this equation. Why? Because you see, as we have discussed in the previous lecture, that think that this is the object, some object, and we have the uniform flow here, right? Whenever it approaches, invariably there will be point of flow or boundary layer separation. Here we will have the wake region full of vortices and irregular type of flow, right? So over this surface up to the point of separation, let's say point of separation is S1 and here S1 and S1 prime, right, in the projection. So over this region we can analytically, or we can solve at least, not analytically maybe, we can solve for tau w and p. But it's quite difficult and nearly impossible to obtain distribution of pressure, obtain distributions of pressure and velocity. Why velocity is necessary? Hence tau w, because tau w is equal to this mu into grad v plus grad v transpose. So at this surface, right? So you can calculate, in order to calculate the wall shear stress, we need to calculate the velocity gradient, so that's why velocity is required. So it's nearly impossible to obtain the distribution of pressure and velocity over the rear side of the object, of the solid body, and why it is impossible? Because it is within the separated boundary. Separated boundary of each. So that's why it's nearly impossible to solve for the entire pressure distribution and the distribution of shear or velocity. So what we have to do? Definitely we will go by empirical equations we will try to develop. So experiment suggests that drag force on a solid object depends on u, that is the free stream velocity, right? Density of the fluid, viscosity of the fluid, and size of the object. So size is represented by equivalent or particulate, more precisely particulate diameter, right? So it's not the equivalent diameter for flow conduit or non-circular cross-sectional conduit, it's the equivalent diameter for a particle. And what is that? If the volume of the particle is Vp, we will equate it to a hypothetical sphere having diameter dp. So dp is equal to 6 Vp by pi cube root of that. So this is the equivalent diameter, right? So what we observe, that Fd is a function of u, dp, rho and mu, right? U, dp, rho and mu. So you see that next we have to go by this dimensional analysis according to Buckingham pi theorem. So Fd, so a number of variables 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right? So number of fundamental dimensions necessary to represent these variables are definitely MLT, so which is 3. So number of dimensionless group will be 2. So what is that? Fd divided by rho into u square into dp square, we can consider it, or we will be getting another dimensionless group, that is u into rho into dp divided by mu, right? So this is the particulate Reynolds number we have discussed when discussing about this laminar and turbulent flow. This is called the particulate Reynolds number, right? So now you see that if it is this object, and here we have the approaching free stream capital U, so we can understand that on a plane perpendicular to the direction of flow, we can think of a projected area of this particle, right? This projected area is in the order of dp square, which is the equivalent diameter of that specific particle or solid object. So what we can write, we can modify the equation as Fd. Now in order to impart this meaning of this dynamic pressure as we have discussed, also that we have used in this head loss calculation. So rho into u square and dp square, we will write it as ap, will be some different function of rep, right? So my empirical equation becomes fd is equal to half this function of rep into rho into ap into u square, and this entire functional form, the xi rep, we will write it as drag coefficient, half cd rho ap into u square, right, where cd is called the drag coefficient. So this is the empirical equation we have to use, and we have to determine that how cd is changing with this rep, the nature of this functional form are to be determined. Now we will think of a specific case. There are also only very rare cases where we can analytically solve for this drag force and the drag coefficient. And what is that case? Where there is no flow separation, because as I have discussed, this flow separation creates the problem of analytical solution of total force and this drag force thereof. So basically, if we are thinking of situations where a geometry of the solid object where the flow separation is it's not a common issue or it's not a common observation, so in that cases we can solve for CD and FD value by analytical calculations, right? So we will now think of some cases where it is analytically solved, and at the same time we have to know that if it is analytically solvable, that means there is no flow separation. So the pressure distribution over the front and the rear half of the object, it remains identical, right? So it is entirely contributed by shear drag. So what I am trying to say, that cases of exclusive shear drag, there is no pressure drag, right? So actually we can conclude that there is no flow separation. And the typical example is flow over a flat plate. That is boundary layer flow, right? So you see that if this is the plate, the width is something like this, say B or W, whatever. The length of the plate is L, right? And we have a uniform flow approaching this plate. So definitely there will be growth of boundary layer, right? So if I considering negligible end effects and REL, which is U into this rho into this L divided by mu, if it is less than 5 into 10 to the power 5, that means it is entirely laminar boundary. Negligible end effect and REL less than 5 into 10 to the power 5, that is laminar boundary layer. We can write that FD, the drag force, on one side only, we are not considering the other side. The other side is this maybe a block itself. So on one side of this surface, solid surface, so it will be this tau W. See, now tau W is changing from point to point. Why? Because tau W is equal to mu into del U del Y, right, and Y equal to 0. However, U for boundary layer flow, as we have witnessed from Blassius solution and von Karman equation, it's a function of x and y. So tau W is eventually a function of x, right? So tau W, we can conclude that it is a function of x. So tau W varies along x. So we'll consider a strip like this, over which tau w we can think to be identical. So here the force is tau w into b into dx, because this is between x to x plus dx. So here tau w into b into dx, and if I integrate it from 0 to L, I will get the total drag force. But my objective is directly not to calculate the drag force, but rather I am interested, or we are interested in this drag coefficient. So drag coefficient is equal to Fd divided by half rho. Here the characteristic velocity is u, or the relative velocity is u, into Fd. Now you think there is no projected area, as the plate has got very low thickness, right? So this thickness, if it is applicable for plate as well as block, so if you now think of plate, then the projected area is 0. So we have to here change our definition of the projected area for this specific case, and this will be considered as the area of the plate in contact with fluid, right? So it will be Fd divided by half rho u square into b into L. So now if I replace this Fd's expression, then this b, okay, let me do it, that 1 divided by half of rho u square into b into L, 0 to L, tau w b dx. So b cancels out, and we get that tau w divided by half of rho u square into dx, and here it is 1 by L. And you see that previously we have discussed and defined this quantity as a skin friction coefficient. So this is skin friction coefficient. And from the Blasius equation we can predict this Cf to be equal to this 0.664. Yeah, it was it's 0.664. So Cf in laminar boundary layer is 0.664 divided by under root of Rex. So here CD will be equal to 1 by L, 0 to L, then this 0.664 divided by under root of or this x into u divided by nu whole to the power half dx, right? So 1 by L 0.664 divided by u by nu whole to the power half, and x to the power minus half, so it's becoming x to the power plus half by half, 0 to L. So it is this L to the power half, and here it's L. So here in the denominator we will have another L to the power L. So 2 gets multiplied. So 2 into 0.664 divided by u into L divided by nu whole to the power half, and that is 1.328 divided by under root of Re. So that's the drag coefficient expression for laminar boundary layer over a flat plate, and which is a case of pure shear drag. So in this next session we'll discuss about that how to calculate the drag coefficient for turbulent flow, and next we will move to cases where it will be exclusive pressure drag, and finally a combined case, that is a flow over a sphere, where we have the contribution of both shear drag and pressure drag. Thank you.